Good morning. Hello, it's Denise from Women Beyond a Certain Age. I'm People that listen know that I get overly excited. Well, now I'm really in third gear because my guest today's cookbook is nothing short of remarkable. That's all I want to say. Our guest today is Kitty Morse. Hello, Kitty.
Hi, Denise. It's been a long time. Nice to see you.
Kitty and I now, this is something that we have all kinds of people, Kitty, that listen to us. We have men, we have women in their 40s, we have people our age, but Kitty and I haven't seen each other, we don't think, for about 20 years. But I know that sounds really old. Kitty and I were both members of the Southern California Culinary Guild. I think
that's right. That's right.
It doesn't exist anymore, but it was a fabulous organization many years ago, and it was food writers and recipe testers and food stylists. So, Kitty, that's how I've always felt that I've known you. Do you know what I mean?
That's true. Yeah, and IACP, the first incarnation. Yeah,
that's
International Association of Culinary Professionals. Mouthful. Right. Yeah, okay.
It was again a wonderful group that we were members of. Yeah. Well, here's what I called Kitty, because Kitty, the book we're focusing on today, and I'm going to make Kitty tell us about herself in a minute, but her book is called Bittersweet: A Wartime Journal and Heirloom Recipes from Occupied France. Now, Kitty, and not only that, I think this is self-published. This book is self-published, isn't it, Kitty?
Yes.
But Kitty has got 10 other cookbooks. So Kitty is a seasoned professional and knows a lot about publishing and production. And I'm so impressed, Kitty, because this is really a treasure trove of memories and love. And so the first few pages of your book, I want you to tell us how I'm reading the first few pages yesterday and I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, but please, I want you to tell our listeners how this idea came about and what happened, how you got this idea.
Well, yes, it was supposed to be my COVID project. Okay. And as everybody else had a COVID project, because as you know, my foreigner cookbooks, and I've had cookbooks with traditional publishers like Chronicle and 10 Speed. My specialty is really Moroccan food. I have 5 cookbooks on Moroccan cooking, so that's how we met. But this one literally fell into my lap after my mother passed away, which was about 5 years ago. And I was cleaning out her closet, and I found a little black suitcase, which I call la petite valise, the small suitcase. And I sort of knew of the existence in my mother's closet and hidden. And I didn't know about the contents. I knew the suitcase existed because my mother was quite protective about it, but I didn't know where she kept it. I never really paid that much attention, and I figured, okay. So I brought the suitcase home to my home in Vista, California, and there I put it on my closet shelf, and I let it sit for 3 years because I thought, okay, there's family documents, and one day I'll need to look at family. And the first week, actually 1 or 2 weeks before COVID started, I was perusing the internet and I fell on C-SPAN, which I never watched, but that day, it was the 25th of January, I believe, C-SPAN. I opened C-SPAN and I learned that it's the 70th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz. And I thought, well, that's really, that's interesting. I know nothing about it. And in my family lore, I sort of knew that this tragedy happened, but I really never followed it. I was growing up in Casablanca, leading my life. I was not in France. The whole book is about my Alsace-Lorraine in northeast France, my mother's ancestors. I mean, I knew they existed, but nothing much. Anyway, this gentleman, Marian Tursky, a Holocaust survivor and a speaker internationally known, was speaking in front of the crematoria, of the ovens at Auschwitz, where I've never been, and believe me, I have no intention to visit because it's too much for me at this point. And I was mesmerized. And he ended his speech by saying, we should invent, and I'm quoting loosely, we should have an 11th commandment. And the commandment should be, we cannot remain indifferent. And again, I'm sort of paraphrasing, but it really, really hit me. You know, we were confined, we're in COVID. I had a vague idea of something in the suitcase, but I wasn't sure. And so I decided, well, you know, let's open this.
Today's the day.
Well, it really gave me the impetus. You know, I had sort of, I didn't know what was inside, honestly. And what fell into my lap was my French great-grandfather, because I also have a North African great-grandfather. Is another story in another book. I think the Minty and Minarets is about my, my Moroccan Algerian family, but this is totally French. And I did not know about my ancestors. And I find my great-grandfather's, his name was Prosper Lévy-Desmarques, who was a military surgeon, twice decorated of the Légion d'honneur, and a really pillar of his community. And his journal documented the advance of the Germans between April and December 1940. So I have this document and I read it and I'm thinking, what am I going to do with this particular journal?
Yes.
And alongside were two little booklets of my great-grandmother, his wife's recipes. I mean, I was completely floored. And as you know, when you've written 10 cookbooks, what do you do with more material? You have to write another one. And it was not in my life's plan. And here I am, and I tell my husband, who's ready at this time, why are you doing another book? Are you crazy? It's so much work. Yeah, but I mean, after my husband read Prosper's journal in French, he says, you have to put this in the book. You have to put the journal in the book and the recipes, and we will test the recipes and photograph the recipes. So the book is really 3 books in one. Yeah. But to begin this, I had to translate everything into English, which I did. French is my first language. So I translate the journal and we edit, and it takes 3 months. And then I look at the recipes and I'm talking to my great-grandmother, and I am named after her. I just didn't know how close my mother was to her grandmother. Yeah, my third name is Blanche, and her name was Blanche Lévy-Desmarques. And I go through the recipes. Oh my God, I have to test these recipes. Yes. And my great-grandmother was a great baker. And so in the testing of the recipes, which I picked, and I mean, it's through, menu from appetizers to soups to salads and main dishes and some traditional Alsatian things and some family dishes, because I grew up with some of them. I just didn't know where they came from. I didn't know. No idea. So it's really the food of Northeast France and family recipes. And I'm talking to my great-grandmother. I said, Blanche, you have 14 chocolate cakes in there. There is no way Kitty Morse is going to bake 14 chocolate cakes. So I picked 2 or 3 chocolate confections. And then, of course, Alsace is the heart of sauerkraut. It's the sauerkraut as Choucroute Central. Kugelhof is a very traditional brioche. The Flammkuch, actually, you can buy frozen at Trader Joe's. It's not bad, but I give you the rest. It's it's a flatbread with caramelized onions and crème fraîche, though.
I have bought that.
Yeah, it's not bad.
What you mean? You're correct.
Yeah, okay. But you can make your own. It's very, very nice. And one of the really interesting recipes. So, of course, as I'm researching the book and reading my great-grandfather's journal, the weight of this becomes heavier and heavier, because I began to feel totally compelled. I have to tell the story of these people. They lived, they had a life, they entertained, they had children, they had a big family. which I will tell you later, I went to look for. I just came back from Alsace-Lorraine. And I mean, it was a compulsion. I was not planning French cooking. I know how to do it, but really Morocco is, what I learned. And all of a sudden, here I am in the middle of a cookbook. And I feel compelled to tell this story as I explained the reason for it. After you read a personal journal and then you do a lot. It took a year of historical research because the journal is World War II. But my great-grandfather practiced medicine during World War I, during the war.
My God, Kitty.
So, so I had to do World War I and then World War II and then a little bit of the Holocaust because that's how it ends, but everything was new to me. So it's, and of course it became so personal that I was totally, I can't even tell you how the 3 years were spent. I was exhausted mentally, physically, everything.
I was just going to say, Kitty, you must have been so exhausted. So exhausted. Here's one of the things, just from glancing through the book, that I want people to appreciate. One, your husband took all the photographs for you.
He did.
Which is just, and the two of you work together. If people that are listening, we have a lot of cookbook authors that listen to us. They know how much work any book is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't care if 50 recipes on rice, it's a lot of work. But when you look at what you did with the history of your family and not even knowing this beforehand, that's the part that's amazing to me. And then having to, Kitty, I should have said that before. Kitty said it. Kitty is known as a Moroccan food expert. Her books have all been based in that, pretty much, Kitty. I mean, and didn't you used to run tours to Morocco, didn't you, for many, many years?
23 food tours.
God. So, but for you to, which speaks volumes to your personality. So to all of a sudden turn around, open this valise, get head deep into it and think, now I have to do this. I mean, it's overwhelming just hearing you talk about that you actually did it. It's overwhelming. It
became huge. And of course, what I haven't mentioned before is that my husband,
it's okay.
My husband helped me, of course, and he edited and did research and took the pictures. And he passed away on January 6th of this year, 4 days before the book came out.
Oh, Kitty, I didn't know that. I'm so...
I should have, I didn't think of telling you. It's just, anyway, let me say it again. That my husband, who edited and helped me write and helped me the research and tested and did the dishes and was 50% involved, passed away January 6, 2023, 4 days before I got the first hard copy of the book. So I can tell you that the past 6 months have been crushing because at the same time, of course, I was planning on going to Alsace-Lorraine last year. And my husband said, you have to go, you have to follow in Prosper's footsteps. You know, the war journal. I went to the Verdun battlefields. I saw the hospitals where he practiced. I mean, I saw everything he mentions in the book. I saw in May 2023 when I went to Alsace-Lorraine, and it was really at the urging of my husband. So that became also for me a mission, which I accomplished, I have to tell you. I saw everything. The great-grandparents' traces are all over Châlons-en-Champagne, which is where my mother was born. It's about 2 hours south of Strasbourg. And I saw the homes where they lived, the hospitals where he practiced, the cemetery where his parents are buried. And I spent a day at the Verdun battlefield, which was the most horrible battle of World War I, was the Battle of Verdun, where there were 350,000 casualties, half on each side. It was ghastly, and I had never visited such a battlefield, but it hit home, of course. Yes. And then in the journal, my great-grandfather, it's a daily journal, and one day he had to flee Chalon-sur-Marne because it was being bombed by the Nazis. And so he and his wife moved to Nancy. I know a lot of people have been to Nancy and Colmar, very famous French towns. And their daughter used to have a holiday home in a tiny village called Rosières aux Salines, which is outside Nancy, about 18 kilometers. And I had made contact with Rosières simply because I needed historical information, where they were, where they lived. Well, I got to Rosières and the mayor was waiting for me with flowers.
Oh,
yeah. So I have to tell you the end. So it was wonderful. I got the tour of Rosières, and lovely, lovely little town, which is apparently known for its stables and its horse culture. Horsemen and women from all over the world go to Rosières to train horses and for races and things. But Rosières-aux-Salines is also where my great aunt and uncle lived. And we found their house.
Wow.
And I saw the house. And it's also the town where my great Prosper and Blanche had to flee to seek refuge with neighbors of their daughter and son-in-law because Nancy was being bombed. And so they went to Rosières-aux-Salines and they hid in a tunnel that belonged to two sisters called the Granderie sisters. Well, I found the house. The mayor took me to that house, and the owner of the house happened to come at that very moment that we're standing in front, and he opened the gates and he showed me the tunnel where Prosper hid. So I have a picture sitting in front of the tunnel where he came out to take a puff of a cigarette and to eat what the Granderie ladies had prepared for him, a rabbit stew, a civet de lapin. So in my book, I have the recipe for the rabbit stew with Riesling wines, very traditional. And I sat in front of the tunnel where Prosper sat while he was eating his rabbit stew. So I can tell you that the vibes and whatever came from the, I don't know where, the sky or whatever, I really felt them. I mean, I could not believe I was sitting in that spot.
I'm looking at the recipe right now for the rabbit stew with Riesling. Mm-hmm. It's beautiful. The photograph is beautiful. The recipe looks delicious. And, honestly, Kitty, the journey that you've been on but what a gift that your husband helped you all that time right up till the end. I mean,
absolutely.
I know it does not, I know how painful, I can't even imagine your pain, but also you must, it's even more amazing to me to have the book in my hand and I have nothing but admiration for you. I'll tell you that. It's a beautiful book. And your family, my God, your family, they must be looking down and just thinking, look at her go.
Because I'm the last one standing.
I gotcha.
And when I went to, I went to Chalon-sur-Marne last May to follow in the footsteps. And I had made contact with a historian from Chalon, which is actually, it was wonderful. He took me all around Chalon-sur-Marne, showed me Chalon-sur-Marne, where my great-grandparents lived, and he organized a talk for me at the city library, and 100 people came. So it was wonderful. I gave my talk in French, and in the publicity, because they called in the radio and the TV and the newspapers, and they were so excited. I mean, I think I'm probably the one and only that's ever come back to Chalon with documents to talk about Chalonnais who live there. They were really, really receptive. Of course. So I gave my talk, and what's really great for me, because in the book, in bittersweet, it's 2 words, bittersweet. I translate Prosper's journal, but in France, this gentleman, Bruno Malte, and it's a publishing company in Chalon has published my grandfather's journal in French. He's selling a little booklet. So my great-grandfather's journal is now available in French in France from Chalon. So now I'm thrilled because I am not, I would love to find a translator for this book, but I'm not doing it myself. It's too much work. I'm not doing it. So it will be great, but this is a beginning. So yeah, it's great.
Kitty, you have made your ancestors proud. That's all I can say.
I have.
It's overwhelming. I'll tell you, first of all, it's, as I already said, writing any book is a lot. People always say, oh, I have an idea for a cookbook. And I try not, I don't say anything most of the time because I'm looking down.
Poor thing. Yeah, no, stay away.
or when we've worked with clients, and this is the truth, we worked with a woman and everything was wrong. That's all I can say, Kitty. She didn't know enough about the food. She didn't know it was her ancestors' food, but she hadn't cooked enough herself. And blah, blah, blah. We did the styling. The book turned out beautiful. And we turned her on to a good editor. It was also self-published. It was a beautiful book. But inside, when I was eating my lunch and she said, yes, well, this is the money I inherited from my mother, so I'm going to spend this $250,000 on this cookbook. Need you to know, I couldn't even make eye contact with her. I mean, I just kept my head down and I thought, oh my God, you should have invested that money in something instead. But we all make choices. This is so much more. I feel like I've just been able to look at your family tree with ancestry.com or, seriously. Now, when you tested the recipes, because you've cooked for years and you know how to cook, what did you find out? Were you able to, what did you love it? Was it a pain? Was it delicious when you were finished? Did you have to change them much?
Very interesting question. Yes and no, because as I said, there's 120 recipes in the book. And they're all French. And I grew up, my mother cooked French food. My grandmother, the daughter of Blanche and Prosper, lived in Casablanca. So she survived the war because she was in Morocco. But anyway, my grandmother, French grandmother, used to cook some of the dishes. And to me, they were, family dishes, French cooking. Yes. So some of them resonated, and I knew really like a clafoutis or some salad du Nouvel An, New Year's Eve. They're classic French.
Yes.
Then the others I tested, and of course Blanche, being a cook of the late 1890s and the early 1900s, you didn't write recipes the way we write recipes, and the French don't care about they're changing their ways now. But the recipes are un petit peu of this and a little bit of this, and sometimes it's an eggshell, and sometimes it's a little pot of yogurt. But my grandmother she's pretty good. It was all in grams, and I decided to, because it's an English book, so my recipes are all in ounces and pounds. I didn't do people can do their own conversions. So I had to do that, and yes. They tasted fine. It's really family classic French recipes, and it was not much to tweak except the quantities. What was interesting to me was at that time, and remember, this is pre-World War I, World War I, and a little bit after World War I. They used a lot of almond flour, so that some of the pastries are really gluten-free, and something I did not use before. So I'm now using much more almond flour. Well, and it's like in the carrot cake and the kaluga. It's really a great ingredient. And of course, she used butter, she used sugar, but when it came to yeast, I had to go to a French bakery to get the right yeast, the baker's yeast, because I didn't want the yeast from the grocery store. And it's very easy to obtain. You go to a French bakery, say, I want a few grams of this or an ounce. So that wasn't a problem. That was really the only thing. And the funny thing also is that choucroute Alsacienne, sauerkraut, is the dish of Alsace. And I decided I make it really, but I buy my ingredients here. They're not necessarily Alsatian or French there, but I find everything I need, German sausages in Southern California. But I decided, okay, I'm gonna buy the real ingredients from an importer. Okay. And do you know how much that blasted sauerkraut cost me? Yeah. Choucroute for $500 I had. So that dish, if you come across it, appreciate it. But I wanted the sausage. I wanted Alsatian sausage, Alsatian ham, Alsatian, the fat, the duck fat, and so and I make it just as well without Alsatian ingredients, I have to tell you. And when I was in Alsace, I thought I'm gonna sample, the real thing in Alsace, in Strasbourg. Well, mine tastes better. So there.
Good. Well, there has to be some reward after all that.
Yeah. So those were a few. You don't need to go buy special ingredients. I have a soup of mushroom in there, and in the Vosges area or around Chalon and Nancy, you can go and forage for your fresh, wild, exotic mushrooms. Yeah. But you buy them dry here, and you rehydrate, and I use that in my mushroom soup. It's very nice.
Perfect. My husband, when we have friends over, I still love to cook. After I retired a couple of years ago, I realized, Kitty, I was always cooking. I mean, I got paid to cook, and I got paid to write recipes, and I got paid to style people's food. But I wasn't cooking that much for us. Do you know what I mean? I cooked 50 hours a week. So I was.
Yeah, I know. I know the feeling. Greasy burgers, please.
Thank you. We were eating out. Well, now that I'm home, I cook dinner almost every night. And but my favorite is we had friends for dinner. My husband said, will you make bouillabaisse? I said, of course. So I went to the fish market and I got the most authentic fish I could. I did everything. In Italians call it cipino, but in French it's bouillabaisse. We called it cipino in San Francisco. Growing up, we'd walk to Fisherman's Wharf, and so it's a family dish. Well, by the time I was finished buying the fish, there were 10 people though. So it was and I bought gorgeous white Bordeaux, and I bought different things and blah, blah, blah. By the time I was finished, the next day my husband said, that was the most gorgeous dinner party you've ever given, and let's do that again in a month. I said, for what I spent taking everyone to Spago, and I wouldn't have had a filthy kitchen the next morning with fish guts on my and he laughed. But there are times that to get it right, it's not always cost effective.
Right but it was great fun, and discovering that I had done the right thing, followed the recipe, and sauerkraut. It's my husband was from Wisconsin, and so we lived in Wisconsin for a long time. And sauerkraut you also have in Milwaukee, so I knew the Milwaukee version of sauerkraut. But that was the biggest challenge. And the other one, because I have to tell you, one of the recipes is croquembouche. The tower,
of course,
the tower of cream puffs.
Yes.
2 weeks. It took 2 weeks to make, fill, style, and photograph that.
Oh, yes. And your bûche de Noël is also beautiful.
And the bûche is a family recipe. So that's my grandmother. We make bûche all the time. It's bûche de Noël, and it's also bûche d'anniversaire for birthdays, and it's bûche for celebrating.
Got it.
And but the croquembouche. I forget the other name.
I have to tell you,
pièce montée, right?
Yeah,
okay,
that kind of project. Now, when people were paying me for every minute of my time, Kitty, I didn't mind. Okay,
right.
Did desserts like that for TV shows. Do you know what I mean? Different things. Now, in my own life, One year, my husband, we hadn't been married long, but he said to me, it's flying out of my head, the name of this it's a fancy layered meringue, and it'll come to me.
It's not a pavlova. It's not a pavlova, is it?
No, not a pavlova. Those we make all the time, but
yeah,
it was
we're wrong.
Layers. It's gorgeous, wrapped in chocolate. But here was the bottom line. It's about 13 layers of meringue in the filling.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And he says to me, will you be making that for Christmas?
And you laughed very loudly, I hope.
And he said, our pastry chef from Vienna always made that. He grew up in a very privileged home, very different than mine. My mother bought a cheesecake at the bakery and said, look at how fancy. So I said to him, Marta made this? He said, yes. I said, where is Marta? He says, oh, she passed away. I said, well, why don't you go to the cemetery and find out if Marta wants to make one now from heaven? I laughed so hard. And I'd say to him, I said, Kenny, you don't know, like your croquembouche. I said, some of these desserts have got recipes within recipes with it. They're pieces. They're fantastic. But no, these are not something you whip up overnight. This is not instant pudding.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what recipe I do love, and I love the picture, is your carrot cake.
Oh, it's great. And that's Blanche's recipe. That is Alsatian carrot cake, not an American carrot cake.
No, it looks delicious.
It is. Yeah, it is.
I think that your point, and this one calls for the almond flour, the fact that they were using almond flour. Now, Kitty, was that because they just knew it worked well? Do you think it's because they couldn't get regular flour they could grind their own almonds? I wonder, I'm just curious. I
am too. I can't answer. And yes, of course they could grind their own almonds. I mean, Alsace is not an almond producing area. Morocco is. So it tells me that they had access to whole almonds and that they could grind it. I thought it was interesting. I don't know.
It's fascinating.
How
Kitty,
and why?
I didn't ask you this. How did you ever start writing cookbooks?
Like, I can do this. Ha ha. Well, no. The first cookbook, they're all based on family recipes. So my first cookbook is Come With Me to the Kasbah, a cook's tour of Morocco. And that was in the late 80s, early 90s, because I came to the United States to go to university in 63 or so. In 1964, and I ended up living with a roommate, and she didn't cook, and she kept saying, what's Moroccan cuisine? I didn't know what it was. I would call my great aunt in Casablanca, how do you make couscous? How do you make tagine? So that's the beginning. And then several years later, my husband joined the Navy. We came to California, and I thought, somebody said, will you give classes? Cooking? I said, sure. I didn't know what I was doing. I said, oh, sure, I'll give you a class. So I made couscous and tagines. There was a heyday of cooking schools. Yes. And my students would say, well, why don't you write a book? And I said to myself, sure, I can do that. Which I did. So the first book took 12 years, I have to say. But it's and I would go back and forth to Morocco, follow my great-grandmother and my great-aunt. So it's family recipes. And then it evolved. After 1984, the LA Olympics, where I worked at the Olympics, I said, I don't want to go back to teaching. I'm going to write. And I started writing. I was blind. And I was lucky that my article sold. And so then came the California Farm Cookbook, because I had a column in the LA Times here in San Diego on farmers. And then I traveled up and down the state, and I loved it. Farms and farmers are my second passion, really, in California. And it's freelancing. You hit it or you miss it.
That's right.
And I happened to hit, and for 10 books. But I have to tell you why I switched, because you asked me about self-published versus. I was with mainline publishers, but for Minty and Minarets, well, I had a book called A Biblical Feast based on biblical ingredients, and it was doing very well. And 10 Speed let it go out of print.
Oh, yes.
And I was upset because I had a huge market. The museum here was, opening the Dead Sea Scrolls, and they didn't have any book. And I go, I'm going to do this myself. So for your listeners, I did the second printing, the second edition. I redid the whole book, the pictures, everything.
Wow.
Of a biblical feast. But I discovered at the time on the internet that there are people they were at the time called printers, publishers. And many of them are in California. And I just emailed a printer publisher and I said, well, what exactly do you do? And they said, well, who do you think prints the books for Chronicle Books? And I said, you are for me. Okay. And so what you do when you hire a printer publisher, you produce the book. So I hired an editor. We did a lot of the styling. We took the pictures. You have a finished product.
Yes.
And you send it to this person who's your go-between between the book in America and China. Unfortunately, I wanted an American printer, but it's so much less expensive in China. I just got like half the price.
I know.
So my first book with this particular printer publisher worked very well. I got the books in my home and I started distributing and marketing. And as you know, that's a whole different kettle of fish. But I don't mind it. It's crazy making. Either you like it or you don't. It's just, yeah. And so I did a second edition of a biblical feast. Same thing for edible flowers with 10 speed. Was a beautiful little book. And I knew I had another market for it. So I found another publisher. And that book went to China and back, a real publisher, a second publisher. I did a second edition. And then I went on my own for Minty and Minarets, which is my memoir of our home in Morocco of Darzitoun, because I own a home in Morocco where I learned how to cook Moroccan and all that Moroccan stuff. And, I ordered through a printer publisher. So every time I have used the same person, same company. But you have to produce the book yourself. So what you have to make sure is that it's a professional looking thing.
That's right. Now, I was thrilled. So people know, Kitty was kind enough when I asked her to be a guest. She sent me the PDF of her book. And then, Kitty, when I started to download it, all of a sudden I thought, I just want to see the book. Do you know what I mean? So I went to Amazon, ordered it. It came the next morning.
Wow.
I ordered on Monday afternoon at 5, and I had it at 10 o'clock having my tea on Tuesday morning.
Oh, wow. Well, that's great. I'd like to know that.
And if people don't realize now, what you're talking about, Kitty, because I self-published, actually one of my best-selling books I self-published. And then that gave me, 5 other book deals through Lisa, but, with different publishers. But producing a book, nowadays, it is easier to self-publish a book. You can get, and the biggest thing that you were talking about in distribution, the fact that your book was on Amazon, though, and I love to support small bookstores. I don't want letters about shopping on Amazon. But when people can find you on Amazon, that's half the battle of marketing.
And this for me, it's new. I have listed my own books on Amazon and dealt with Amazon. And frankly, at this point, but hang on, this time I'm not. This time I don't want to deal with Amazon. I've dealt with them too much. I don't want them. But I found a distributor in New York who puts my book on Amazon and Ingram. And Ingram is very important because Ingram is a wholesaler to the bookstores. So you go through more expense, but my book is available nationally or internationally, wherever you can get on Amazon.com. It's not available on FR, which is France. It's on .com. So and you can hire professionals to help you. But what I want to stress is that if you're self-publishing, your book has to compete with a Chronicle book, a 10-speed book, a Harper book, or whatever. It cannot be, I'm just going to write a book. So my steps now are marketing this book. I also contact bookstores directly. And I have a Substack page, the Kasbah Chronicles, that I write. Yeah. And I've had it for about 12 years as a newsletter. But I ask my readers, if you know of a little bookstore in your neck of the woods, let me know. And sometimes I can contact bookstores in Arkansas or Washington, D.C. or, Florida. and I have a lead. Otherwise, it's all internet and cold.
Yes.
It's a job. It's a job.
Now, people don't realize that when they talk about writing the book, I always want to say under my breath, and then you have to sell it.
Right.
So then the flip side of that, the writing will seem almost easy compared to when you have to sell the book. Now, answer me this. I'm amazed by it. Have you spoken at like the culinary historians with this book yet?
I have spoken to the culinary historians of Chicago, and I'm slated for LA in November. It's a Zoom meeting.
Yes, that's okay.
I love culinary historians, so I'm trying to contact them around the country. Good. And I call them up and I say, I've done this, and my book, I'm thrilled actually, because the market is not only cooking and history, but it's also a Jewish and sort of Holocaust, but not really kind of book. So it's a whole different mind. And my book is not a kosher cookbook, but it is about Jewish history.
Yes.
So it's now at the Shoah Museum in LA and the Shoah in Washington, D.C. So I'm contacting organizations that would be interested in the story.
Excellent.
Cooking schools are okay as long as I can talk. It's not about cooking as food. It's about telling the story.
For our listeners, if you look, I don't know that everybody, we mentioned culinary historians. There's many cities have culinary historian groups.
Yeah, they do.
And the thought is if they don't, you should start one in your neighborhood. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Nancy Savolosky has been and Charles Perry in Los Angeles, and the ones that have totally kept the culinary historians of Southern California alive. And Kitty, I look forward to that yours is Zoom, because that way I'll join when I know you're speaking.
Please.
When we broadcast, unless there's new listeners, when we broadcast the podcast, Cindy puts all the information about the author up on our website and up on our Facebook page. Actually, people use, of course, the Facebook page the most. That's what it's Women Beyond a Certain Age on the Facebook page. And we'll give you Kitty's information. Yes, I wanted to say, Kitty, so you've had a newsletter for 12 years.
It's called the Kasbah Chronicles.
Fabulous.
You can look at it on my website. I'm really lagging behind because I have so much going on. But the Substack is the Kasbah Chronicles, as well as on my website, kittymorse.com. I love feedback. You can contact me anytime. And I will post soon on the Substack, Kasbah Chronicles. I promise.
No, it's funny. It's a lot. And I always say, when you're a one-horse town, you have a lot to do, which is what most cookbook authors so much. Honey, I cannot thank you enough. I can't wait for your talk in November. And then, Kitty, maybe this would be this would be an incredible Christmas gift for people to give to people in their family, and especially if they had parents or a father or a grandfather that was in World War II. I know this. So I hope you'll come back and talk some more, because we just touched the surface of this book.
Thank you so much. Yes.
It's a triumph, Kitty. When I got it yesterday, I was having my tea and I was turning the pages. That's what I'm going to do this afternoon. I'm going to get to read more of it. But I thought to myself, this is a triumph of the human spirit. Your relatives and you, and I want to thank everyone that listens to us. I always like to thank Miss Cindy, who keeps the train on the tracks. Without Cindy, there wouldn't be a podcast. If you have questions or want to reach out to us, or you have, you reach us at womenbeyond@icloud.com. And this was inspirational to me, Kitty, and I'll tell you why. I've become in my family the custodian of the old pictures and the family pictures.
Yes.
San Francisco and stuff before. Enjoy it. But I had, like you describe about finding this valise in your mother's closet, I was just talking to my sisters. I have the letters that my father and mother wrote to each other during World War II. They'd only been married 6 months when World War II broke out. And it's an amazing story. He was an amazing story. But you know what? I've almost been afraid to open it because I was afraid it seems so personal. Do you know what I mean? I wondered if it was just too personal, but you have given me the, I'm going to try. I'm going to look at them and open them and because I see how much you learned.
Oh, I learned, and I want the story to continue.
Yes.
You know, because we don't have children, and anyway, I have nieces and nephews, but it's more than that, and it's a story for humanity.
Yes, it is.
It's not it's a very personal story, but it belongs to the world. This kind of
You're
story.
right.
Yeah, so I'm glad I inspired. Do it. Call me when you falter.
Thank you so much for your time today. I know how busy you are. I want to thank everyone that listens. And it's Kitty Morse, Bitter Sweet, a wartime journal and heirloom recipes from occupied France. It's a triumph, Kitty. Thank you so much.
Oh, Denise, merci. Thank you so much.
And I hope it won't be 20 years before we speak again.
I hope so. Well, listen, next time I'm in LA, I'll give you a buzz or something.
Please do.
And come to Vista. We're only an hour north of San Diego. Farmland.
That's a possibility.
I'll give you a farm tour.
All right. Thank you so much. And thank you, Miss Cindy. And thank you, Kitty. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you, Denise. Thank you. Bye-bye.